Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Our goal is to make a positive impact in the dental field. I have been a dental assistant, a biller, an office manager, a scheduler, a hygienist, and a dental coach, which makes me your biggest fan. My husband was in the military and we traveled all over the United States. I had opportunities to work in many different practices, and I saw incredible practices and practices that had a lot of potential within them. Thank you for joining us. Let's dive into the podcast. Welcome to the Increda-dental podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Flynn. Today, we're going to speak about communication and how we can do better with communicating, because that's one of our biggest issues that we struggle with. And sometimes it's not just in work, it is with our family and with our friends, and how we need to improve that communication and tactics to use. So I'm going to go back to an example. One of my very dearest friends was going through a divorce, and she had a lot of challenges going on, but I didn't know she was going through a divorce. She lives in a different state. And when we finally had time to talk and she let me know what was going on in her personal life, I was horrified. I was so sad that I didn't reach out to her more, that I didn't respond to her text quite as quickly, that I wasn't calling her more often, more than anything, and showing love and consideration for what she was going through. And it was embarrassing to me. And after a little while, after I got over myself, of my pride, of me being in my little bit of frustration and anger about the situation, I asked, why didn't you tell me you were going through this? And she was like, well, I did. I started calling more. And I sent out a couple texts, but I didn't get that communication from a few additional phone calls or those few more texts that there was something going on that was wrong and that she was struggling. So how can we communicate better with our family members, our coworkers, and our staff, so that way we are there for them when they're struggling, when they're going through something hard? Because a lot of times we don't come out and just say, oh, I'm going through a divorce. That's not how we do things. As humans, we usually hint, oh, I'm kind of going through a hard time right now, or things are hard at home. And that we're supposed to get from that, they're going through a very challenging situation. So how can we change this so we get it? So we're there for them as that person that they need. So I'm going to cite a couple of sources. The first one came from Jancy Dunn. She published in the New York Times in 2023. It's called The 8-Minute Phone Call. And again, it was published cited by Elena Sandler on Psychology Today. The article is called Promoting Hope, Preventing Suicide. Is what they pointed out was that a small connection was enough, but a very intentional connection it needs to be. And they pointed out, starting out with just a simple text, if you're the person who's struggling, and saying, do you have a minute to talk? But to change that so that way there's a special word or phrase so people understand it's an SOS call. So what phrase or wording can you use? So you can use SOS, I need some help. Or you can use saying, having a hard time, or I'm struggling today. I'm having a hard time staying on task. I need 3.5 minutes of your time. Sometimes you can say the plane's delayed or it's going down, baby. Something along those lines. But the words they used was, do you have 8 minutes? And this was cited also by Simon Sinek. Is what they said is 8 minutes is enough to help the person, I almost said patient, to help that person feel loved and cared for, and to kind of pull them out of the slump that they're in at that moment. Because sometimes when we think of the problem that they have and it's vast and it's big, that this is going to take hours of my time. And then we pull back and we don't call and we don't text and we are resistant because we don't feel like we have enough time. But I want to let you know that you have the same amount of time as anyone else on this planet, that you have 24 hours in your day. It's a matter of being very intentional about this time. So if someone texts you and says, the plane's going down, or having a hard time staying on task, whatever the code word you make, but make a code word for your family members, for your staff, for your friends, so you understand that they need help. Because if that person would have texted me and we had a code word saying the plane's going down, I would have understood better that they were really struggling and that they needed my help. Hi, Alicia from Increda-dental. I want to let you know why I started this program, this practice. And that is because I watched my dad with his own dental practice and he struggled tremendously. He invested a lot in himself and his employees and his patients. And he struggled to make a profit, to collect from patients on time, to have people understand the treatment that they needed, to have his staff on board and work as a team. It was a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. And he was practicing until the age of 76. And I don't want his story to be your story. I want you to have joy in your practice, have a practice that you have always dreamed about, and smile going into work and smile coming home, because not only are you profitable, but you're working together as a team and you're providing help for your patients, and you know that they are in the right place because they are with you. So if you'd like to schedule a time, go to Increda-dental.com and we'll talk for a short 15 minutes and see what solutions we can provide, and also if we're a good fit, because I'm not the right fit for everyone and everyone's not the right fit for me. But I want to help dentists to have the practice that they always dreamed about. So head to that website, book a small time frame for me and you, and we'll explore and be creative together. All right, back to the podcast. So choose out the code word. The one that you'll see cited a lot is, do you have 8 minutes? And it's what that means is that you call them and you speak for 8 minutes. Start out with a text. I have time around 12:30 today for an 8-minute phone call. And you set a timer and just let them know that I love you, I care about you, I'm worried about you. We have 8 to 10 minutes of our time, but I want to use this and intentionally connect with you to let you know that I care. It is sufficient to put a limit on your time because we need to use our time wisely. And then when you have and you choose to use those 8 to 10 minutes, listen. Do not judge. Do not give suggestions on how to solve their problem unless they ask. Listen intently and almost, if you will, drink them in. Drink in what they're saying. Understand what they're trying to say through their words that are underlying. And almost, if you will, listen in a way that shares love back at them, that puts love back on that person. Because a lot of times when things are really, really bad, they are not feeling loved. They are really down and they need to feel that love from you as an employer, a coworker, a friend, a family member. They need that from you. And they need that intentional connection. Second thing I really want to point out is keeping their privacy. If they're speaking about something that they don't want the public to know, it is not your job to share unless you ask their permission. Here's an example. When my husband was diagnosed with cancer, I was not ready to talk about it. I wasn't sure what the surgeries looked like. We hadn't met with the oncologist. I had no idea what to expect. And to be honest, I was terrified. And I couldn't talk about it to start with. I met with one of my very dear friends and they asked, can I tell my wife? It was a really close friend of our family. And I said, honestly, I'm not ready yet. Give me a little bit of time. And then you can tell your wife, but I'm too afraid right now to talk about it. And every time I talk about it, it just brings up so much emotions that I can't deal with this right now. I just need to let you know what we're going through. So that way when my husband calls, you know how to react. And so by doing this, it helped them to be aware of the situation. And later, about 2 weeks later, I was like, okay, you can tell your wife now. But I was too scared at that time to have them tell their spouse because I felt so vulnerable. So respect their privacy. I really respected him for keeping my privacy and my husband's privacy at that moment because I was not ready to share with the public about the cancer treatment we were looking at. So make sure that you listen and you listen intently, that you send them some messages quietly through your mind that they are cared for, that they are loved, that they are going to be all right. Because when we have that positive attitude, we're thinking those positive thoughts about them, they pick up on those. If we're saying in our head, oh, that's such a small problem, what's wrong with you? Pull your head out. They're going to pick up on that. Don't do that. and respect their privacy. If they're not ready to share information of why they're going through a hard time or why they're struggling, keep it private. Nothing is worse than having a hard time, a struggle in your life, and your trust is ruined because someone broke that privacy. So what I want to encourage you today is do those steps that I spoke about, but choose out a code that will work for your staff members, for your team, for your family, for your friends. Choose out a code. Do you have 8 minutes? The plane's going down. I'm having a hard time staying on task. Choose what works for you and apply it. So that way, your people in your life do not suffer alone. Because if we can reach out in a way that's safe, we may even save a life. And there is not a single price you can put on that. This was a hard and heavy subject today. I'm going to just send you a lot of love and thank you for listening today and knowing that you matter and that you are worth so much more than you even recognize. And you are making an incredible impact on people's lives every day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Alicia Flynn.